Hi, I'm Eric Lupau, and welcome to Beyond the Belt. This is a conversation with Cornell Thomas, a black belt out of New Jersey, USA. Cornell is a basketball coach, trainer, multiple-time author, life coach, mentor, and a youth and motivational speaker. In addition to all that, he also hosts a yearly positivity summit. I hope you enjoy our chat. Well, what was it like for you to get your black belt?
It was funny because I didn't know I was getting my black belt until I showed up at the seminar. Like I had no idea that I was getting my black belt, and it was me and I think in my class there were six other black belts. So we were 3 through 9 or 3 through 10 for my professor's black belt. He only given out had given out two black belts. So when I found out, it was funny. I was getting changed, and I got my brown belt, and one of my buddies like, "Yeah, man, I'm so excited for you guys to get your black belt today." I'm like, these guys are getting their black belt today. He goes, "Are you?" He's like, "You're getting your black belt today." I said, and I just froze. I was like, "What? Wait, what?" And we had all these black belts from the city, from Hensel Gracie, New York, up to the academy to come up. I mean, guys that I've seen since I was a white belt, and I remember just being emotional really quick and still in shock. And then when he called me up to get, I think I'm the seventh. When he called me up to get my black belt, and these are my brothers I'm with. I mean, these are the guys that we all started together. So like it was emotional for me. And one of my jiu-jitsu black belt mentors, he drove in from the city to come watch me get my black belt. So I just remember being emotional, being in shock, and then you're just trying to figure out how do you feel it once you get it.
I mean, what did it do for you? Did you feel different? Did you feel like you had some sense of responsibility? Did anything change for you, or was there just shock?
Yeah, it was shock, but my thing is I always have this rule: whatever belt I get, I have to get it dirty right away. So like as soon as I get that belt, I gotta roll because as you know, like as soon as you get a belt or a stripe, now you're even a bigger target, and there's no bigger target than a black belt. So I got my black belt that Saturday, and then that Tuesday I went back. I went down to the city, which I trained between my school in Denville, New Jersey, Hensel Gracie Denville, and then the main academy. So I went down there on Tuesday to get my belt dirty. And the funny thing is, they did another ceremony for me in the city when my Professor Zed, when he found out that I got my black belt. So I did a ceremony on that Saturday, and then I had to turn around and I did it with my New York brothers and sisters, and was emotional all over because I couldn't believe they did it. Emotional all over again. They did the whole entire line and everything. But guys are just coming at you, and girls are coming at you. Anybody's coming at, and I love that. Like I love that feeling. I love the fact that like there's a target, and now everybody's gonna go after you. So I would just get myself prepared.
What was it that first role that made a difference for you? Did you feel different in that first role, or did you feel
Yeah,
like I have to
you kind of carry
defend
yourself a little
myself?
different. Yeah, like when you get your black belt, it's like I feel like that kind of every belt that I leveled up when I roll with someone. It's like now as a black belt, you have a different level of responsibility because at the school, everybody's kind of looking at you as the model of how to carry yourself. And I didn't have a model of how to carry myself until I got to the city. My professor, when he first started, even though he was a black belt in multiple martial arts, different martial arts, he was a blue belt when he opened up the school 17 years ago. I mean, this is unheard of now, but he was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, but he was one of Henzo's like original guys like Danaher, Matt Serra, all those guys. So he was one of those main guys. So I didn't know what a black belt, purple belt, we didn't know what any of that looked like. And so now that I had a black belt, I have these white belts, blue belts, purple belts, brown belts looking at me. And I just have a level of responsibility where I have to carry myself the right way so they can see that. Like when you're a black belt, don't not roll with the white belt or the blue belt because now you're some elevated whatever, right? My mindset has always been I roll with everybody because people roll with me when I was a white belt and were very respectful. But my first roll, I know I felt one of the guys said to me, it was funny. I went down to the city, he goes, "What do you have? You have black belt powers now?" He's like, "You feel different," and I guess like subconsciously or whatever, you're just like, I gotta, have this different level of responsibility now that I have this black belt on.
What felt different? Like rolled harder, rolled gentler, more technical?
It's more like the game kind of slows down a little bit. Like when I roll, some of the best advice I ever got in my life was by one of my black belt mentors, this guy by the name of Gene Dunn. He was a black belt in jiu-jitsu, judo, and some striking martial arts. and he's the first black belt I ever rolled with in my life. I was a 3-stripe white belt. It was like he was like playing with the baby, right? But he knew that I wanted to get better, and I was always respectful when we rolled. I wasn't going crazy. And the best thing he said to me, he goes, when I was a purple belt, he goes, okay, your top game is getting pretty good. Roll from your back from now on. From now until black belt, just start from your back, work on your back game. And so I've always been kind of chill, and then like I use that explosiveness to roll. But when you get your black belt, it's almost like the game slows down a little bit more. It's like you start seeing the punches slower, like the punches are a little bit slower. So it's like you start feeling like, okay, I don't have to like have this athletic round. Like you see guys roll sometimes, it's just a purely athletic round for 5-6 minutes. And even though there's a chess match in that athleticism, right? I like the matches where there's like these bursts of athleticism. So for me, like when my first couple rolls, I was just like, okay, I don't have to use my athletic. I can kind of chill and read this, because especially I was in my gi when my first couple rounds of black belt. So that, I think it was, the game slowed down a little bit more.
Is there anything that you sort of did with your peers that got promoted that felt different? Like, was that first engagement with your peers like different for you guys?
Yeah, well, I mean, they've been coming at us. I mean, we're both big humans, right? So like, people come at you regardless. It
Just
doesn't matter
so everyone
color.
knows, how big of a human are you?
I'm 6'5", 250.
Yeah.
So I'm a decent sized guy, right? And it's like, so people come at you regardless. But when I got my black belt, roll the other black belts, it was funny because after a couple weeks, he started saying, "Hey man, let's really start working on this. Let's go back to the beginning, and like let's get your scissor sweep on your left side, your non-great side better." Like we just started breaking things down. Like me and my buddy Piotr, we would just do rounds, like these 2-minute rounds, but it would be like a blitz, like as fast as you can go trying to pass. And like we just do these like fun little games where we started kind of working on the weak parts of our game, like really weak parts of our game and things that we ignore. Because when you roll, like I equate it to like playing basketball. Like you don't go in a game and do your weaknesses. You go in a game and do your strengths. So a lot of times, regardless of what you say, yeah, I'm really working on. Once you get down to it and someone's really starting to get at you, you're gonna start going to what your bread and butter is. So I think that's what changed for me as a black belt. It's like, no, I don't care if I get smashed every day in training. I'm gonna work on the things that I've been kind of neglecting to get to black belt, because all my belts had different themes. Like my white belt was like, shit, like your white belt's like, what's happening, right? And then your blue belt, you're like, okay, I think I kind of know what's figuring it out, but like these purple belts are still kind of killing me. And then my purple belt was like, it was a hunter belt. Like for me, I was like, all right, in the middle of my purple belt, I'm like, now I can start doing a little bit better with some brown belts and stuff like that. Like now it's more of a hunter belt. And the brown belt was like, now the black belts are rolling with me. And now I was like, okay, cool. I can really see that next level there, regardless of how long it takes. So like all my different belts had themes. So the black belt, you're like, okay, well, what's your theme for black belt now that you're a black belt? And it's like, well, my theme now is go back. It sounds like cliche, but like go back to a white belt. Like go back to the beginning. So like that's what I've been doing now I've been a black belt now for going on 10 years. So it's like now I'm all the way back to the beginning.
Do you feel like any of those belts are different for the way you would describe them to other people? Like, would you recommend that somebody treat purple belt as their hunter belt, or do you have a different view of that, in hindsight?
I feel like it depends on your personality and what you kind of want out of jiu-jitsu. Like I was always very competitive. Played it, I'm very competitive. So for me, when I saw as a purple belt, like I'm really like, okay, what's in front of you? Like what's the next thing in front of you that you have to go get? Like I'm always a next mountain kind of guy. And the belts to me were mountains, right? Like white belt, you're sitting there, you're like, you get your first stripe, it just keeps you going for another couple steps of that mountain, and then you get blue and it's like, oh, here's another mountain, right? So purple belt, I started hunting because I'm like, all right, no one's taking it easy on me anymore. Like no one is like, oh, look at this white belt. Come on, buddy. Like I'll roll with you, right? Like now I'm getting the forearm in the throat, right? I'm getting like loop choked. I'm like, okay, these guys are not friendly anymore. So I'm like, all right, I gotta go hunt, right? So for me, I'm like, I'm gonna go hunt, but it could be different, Like I've always been open to education, and that's the thing that I think has helped me in my jiu-jitsu journey the most, is just being open to being educated by anybody. Like I was in an arm bar. One of our blue belts had me in an arm bar Thursday, a tight one, like a tight one. Like I probably should have tapped, but like a tight one. And I'm like, I'm sitting there, and I'm like yeah, whatever. And I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm not trying to roll out. I'm like, this mother ever has me in a really tight arm. Like this is tight. Like he's about to submit me. And then like I eventually ended up getting out of the armbar. But I mean, now I should have let him tap me on that one because I'm like, I told him at the end, I said, that was extremely, extremely tight. That was a phenomenal armbar. Because he was disappointed, like, man, then you just got on top and you just tapped me. I was like, no, you don't understand. Let's go back. Don't worry about what I did after. Worry about what you just did. You got me in a great technique, and I was dead to rights. I was like, I just got out because I have more experience. That's it. So like I look at it, I'm like, jiu-jitsu to me has always been a play. Like it's even though I'm hunting, I'm still playing. It's not like I'm hunting like, oh, I hate that. I'm gonna go kill that brown belt, right? Like it's still playful for me. Like I still like the chess match of it, right? But it's I was going after guys. Like when I went to the city, in the city back then when Danaher was teaching those classes, it's like once the technique is done, like you have your 2 or 3 standing techniques, you have your 1 or 2 things on the ground, and then it's 6 minute rounds. Like it's the Wild Wild West. You're standing up and you're looking across, and there's 70 guys and girls on the mat, and it's basically who you get eye contact with. That is your next round, right? It's not like, hey man, like you want to roll. No, if this cat is looking at you, that is your next round, and you're not ducking it. It's not like you're gonna act like you have dead eye and start looking at other people, right? Like that's your next round. So I'm from that school where you just go with anybody, like, and that might be a 3-stripe black belt, that might be a all-American wrestler that's a blue belt. You'll find out because there's 2,000 some people. Like, there's been so many roles that I would slap hands with the person, and immediately like the wrestler or the judo guy, and you don't know until they put their hands on you. That's what I loved about going into the city. Like you had no idea until you try to sweep the guy, and his hips are so great. You're like, after running, like, all right, bro, where'd you wrestle? Oh, I was all American. Like, okay, thanks, appreciate it.
I always have this, like in the gi specifically, when I slap hands with somebody, mostly because I'm not an aggressive or competitive person. I usually just kind of put my hands out and then see how they grab my sleeves. And that's usually a good telltale sign. Like if I'm going with somebody and they grab my sleeves and start pulling me really fast and hard, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how much this person knows, but this is going to be an athletic, chaotic
Yeah,
round. And
yeah,
or if they just, they grab my sleeves and we start working our hands together, and it's like, okay, cool. This person's matching my energy, which I'm
yeah,
generally appreciative of the older I get.
yeah. But see, I think that's beautiful, Eric, because as I get older, it's like I'm very similar in terms of I always start from sitting down, like unless we're standing, right? But like I always start from like we slap hands and we're gonna roll. I'm never standing up to get past your guard. I'm always like my boys would be like, Cornell, come on, man, like pass my guard this time, because I love playing guard, and I love seeing what you do to pass it, because then that's knowledge I can put in my brain, like, okay, he passed it this way, or there's some holes this way. So I love the complexity of the guard game, and I'm the same. Like I slap hands, and it's like you grab someone, and you're just like this, and the person's like, they think you're joking, like, why are you so light with me? I'm like, well, it's a chess match to me now. Like, and I'm getting older, so it's like I'm not. I don't mind standing up. We can stand up and go. I'm not like a butt scoot guy or nothing against those guys. Or I don't pull guard or whatever. I just I'll start from standing. But it's like once we get on the ground, man, it's like I want to see what you do mentally to defeat the problem that I'm posing to you. And then once that happens, I'm like, all right, cool. Now I have another thing I need to work on to get better at. I don't mind when guys pass my guard and get me in side control and get me in a. I'm like, cool. Now this is a whole different problem. It's like just chess to me. It's a whole different problem, right? Like, and now I got to figure out how to get past your knight, get your knight out of there somehow, right? And like work this position.
I do the same thing. I don't care what position I end up in. I think for me it's also because I'm not very competitive. So if I win, if I lose, it doesn't really matter to me. And so if somebody gets me in a really bad position, even if they're a white belt, I'm like, cool, we're going to have some fun from here. And if I tap, I tap. And, that's just how it goes.
Yeah. But that's why I love talking to you the first time when me and you were having the conversation. Like you're a killer, right? And it's like the fact that is your mindset, where your mindset is just like, hey man, wherever it goes, right? And when you have the right gym, like in my 17 years at my gym, at Henry Gracie Denville, I have never once heard someone come up to me like, yeah, man, I tapped this guy, blah, 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 or I got this. Like, we don't, no one talks like that. If you get someone in training, yeah, you might bust chops like the black belts, oh, I kind of, but it's like, it's all good, bro. It's all in fun. Like, no one's going home saying, took that arm home. Like no one, like at the end of the day, we want guys to be able to like go to work and like pick up their kids, right? And walk. So I love that your mindset is of that nature. And I always say, the biggest killers I know are the nicest humans I've ever been around on the earth. Like the guys that fight in like Bellator and fight in these different places, they're the nicest, sweetest, most gentle people. It's just they have a switch.
I feel like I feel very lucky that I get to teach at such a large gym. We've got about 500 ish jujitsu students, and the reason I like that is because in a very sort of selfish ego kind of way, I get to make people in the image of jujitsu that I like, which is you know you can go hard, you can be chill, but your goal is to take care of yourself and your training partner and have a good time, and don't be a dick. And I get to impart that to, hundreds of people. And because we're such a large gym, so many people come through, and that's the vibe that they get from myself and not every instructor is like that. And I think it would be not good if every instructor was like that. But most of our instructors are like that. And I appreciate that we get to impart that kind of mentality onto new students.
Yeah. And when people do come through, now they're gonna bring that home to their school, right? Where it's like, man, I wrote this guy Eric, and he's awesome, but it's like he was so chill. Like we had a good roll, and it's like he was so cool. Like I want to go back. Those are the schools that you're like, man, I can't wait to go back to. And again, as bigger human beings, when you go to a school, people automatically think you're gonna go and then just like a dojo storm and try to bulldoze the instructor. Like I was training in Bournemouth, England, and the instructor was a brown belt. I think I had my black belt for maybe 2 years or so. He's like, hey, man, you want to show something? I said, yeah, sure. I mean, I'd be honored to. Anything. And like I showed a technique, then we start to roll. It was no-gi class, start to roll. And I'm like rolling with him. And it's like, so he's like, man, you're like super light. And you're about, I was like, yeah, man, I want to just have fun. Like, I'm not trying to like watch this student. So I'm from blah, blah. It's just so stupid to me. Like, it's so different. I think that's the way the sport maybe has changed a little bit, where it's like, there's so much trash talk because it makes money or because it gets you followers or clout. There's so much. I'm in an era where it's like, it was either dojo storm, you either get punched in the mouth, right? Or you just go train and hang out and be cool. It wasn't this era where it's like there's no repercussions. You can just say whatever you want about people's families and moms and blah blah blah, and then like go do a sport jiu-jitsu match with no punches or kicks.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm not about that. Do you feel like you just got really lucky with the gym? Like, is there something in particular that drew you to the gym, or was it just dumb luck how you got started there?
It was the dumbest of luck how I got started there, because this is such a crazy story. So I got a scholarship to play basketball in North Dakota, right? So my wife actually was a basketball player on the women's team in North Dakota. And I remember the summer before my last year, I was an RA in the dorms. And there was this girl that was an RA, and she goes, Cornell, you want to go to this kickboxing class with me? And I'm thinking to myself, like, I ain't going to no damn Taibo class. Like, because everybody thinks they can fight. I thought I could throw a punch. I had no idea. I'm 23 years old. I'm like, obviously I know how to throw a punch, And so she goes, no, it's not like that. It's just this one guy. It's like me and this dude, and it's like, he like still fights, and he's like 55. And I'm like, what? And she goes, yeah, just come. I get there, I swear to you, this dude is something out of like The Last Dragon. Like he comes in, short black dude, like I would say like 5'3", 5'4", no fronts. Like, hey man, what's going on? You good? Hey, my name, blah. I'm like, hey man, what's up? He's like, oh, you like kickboxing? I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, cool. He gets out Thai pads. He's like, all right, throw a punch. And I'm like, right? And he's like, oh, we got some work to do. All right, that's good. So I would sneak twice a week to this guy because my coach knew that I was doing kickboxing. I could break my helmet on scholarship, right? So I would sneak after our conditioning session, and I do 2 I do 2 days a week of Muay Thai with this guy, or more American kickboxing. And so I did that. And then when I got out of there and I came back home and I was training to go overseas, I was looking for a kickboxing gym. And at that time, there were no kickboxing gyms. The only thing that was there was karate, Ishinru. And the guy that was teaching the class, he was a black belt in judo. So I was like, oh, I think the judo is the throwing thing. So I was like, whatever. So I go in there, and like immediately, like the first day, like I kickboxed for probably like 6 months or so, 7 months. The first day they're doing sparring, right? And I'm like, okay, and I have no gloves. And this guy, like one of these karate, like I'm a badass guy, little guy. Like I'm like I can't hit him, so I'm just kind of like going to the body, and this dude punches me in the neck, and I'm like, okay, so I just start chasing him around the school because I'm way younger. This is before kids, right? I'm chasing around the school, and like Mr. Thomas, control, control, and so I'm doing karate for a little bit, and the school's cool, good people, but I'm like, I don't want to do katas, and I don't want to call this 10-year-old Mister, right? Like I'm not gonna call 10-year-old Mister anything. Like he's a double black belt and he's 10. Like I'll wedgie this kid, right? So it's like the only thing I wanted to do was spar, and I found these three other guys that were like around my age. Like they're a little bit older. They're like in their 30s, but like all have like their military background. Used to box in the military, so we were like the four horsemen. So we would all spar against each other. So I loved it. And then one day we had to do a shiai, which is like a seminar, right? And they're like something that's non-stand up. So I'm like, what the hell is non-stand? Like, what are we gonna do? And a buddy of mine, I swear to you, said, Cornell, what do we look through this book? And it was Hinzo Gracie and John Danaher. It was their first instructional book. So I'm looking at it like I would look at something in Japanese, right? And I'm like, what is this? He goes, I don't know. We can just like, they have diagrams. We can just try to do these moves on each other for the shiai. So like we go to the shiai, we try like three like takedowns. I think one was like a like omoplata sweep or something like that. Like we butchered, like it was terrible, but they didn't know any better because it's all karate guys, so it probably looked good. And like I'm driving because I'm done with. I'm like I'm gonna be done with karate. I think I'm like a green belt or something. And I'm driving down the street, and in big letters says Hinzo Gracie Jiu Jitsu. And I'm like, that's the guy. I just read his book. I was like, he's in Denville, New Jersey. So I call up, and the guy picks up George Cernak, who's my instructor, my professor, and I go, can I come into the school and meet you? And he goes, yeah, come in. So I come in and like bow to him. He's like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, yeah, bow. He goes, no, we're not really bowing here. He's like, this is what we're doing. So I walk in, Eric, I swear to you, I walk in and I haven't walked out. Like I literally walked in 17 years ago. My first role was with this kid I'm really good friends with now, but he's like 16. I was 25. I was a grown man. And he must have tapped me out 30 times in like 6 minutes. And I got home. My wife was like, how was the class? I was like, this Harry Potter looking kid tapped me out like 30 times today. And she goes, what are you going to do tomorrow? I was like, I'm going back. I'm going right back. I got to find out how to tap Harry Potter. And so I went back every single day. And when I was a 3-stripe white belt, at that time in the city, they had a rule. You can't train at John's class unless you're a blue belt or above. But my professor, George, would take me and like 4 other guys, and we would go into the city and train that noon class on Fridays. It was like a pilgrimage to Mecca. So we'd we take our car to Harrison, and then we take the PATH train from Harrison to the city. We get off, we trained at John's class from 12 to like 1:30, shower, go to Jamba Juice, take the train back, right? And then drive back. So it'd be like from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Fridays, I was gone. I was with these guys. Like all we did was we just trained and come back. And so I started going there. And when I started going to the city, I started seeing all these different colors of belts. Started seeing all the purple belts and brown belts and black belts. And I wasn't the only black belt that would train me is the guy I told you about, Gene Dunn. He was my first black belt mentor. He's maybe an inch or two shorter than me, big guy, black belts and everything. And the first time I trained with him, he treated me like I was a child, like a small child. He was so gentle when he threw me down, because he's a black belt in judo too. So like threw me down, and then got the mount, and then went for an armbar, but didn't take it, and like rolled me over into his guard, let me pass, And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I have no idea what to do. And then I'm leaning too far. He rolls me over. He's like, oops, rolls me over. And then I'm like, what just happened? And he shook my hand and he goes, hey, good roll, next. So every Friday I'd roll with Gene. And then, like I said, when I got my purple belt, I rolled with Gene one time, and he goes, hey, that was a good roll. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like thinking to myself, like, you're just saying that to be nice. And he like looked at me and he goes, no. He goes, that was a good roll. He goes, now work from your back. He said, no more top game for you. Now you work from your back. And I remember my first time coming back into the city after that. That was a Friday. On Tuesday, I had to roll with Daniel Gracie. And Gene said, no more top game. And this dude, for 2 6-minute rounds in a row, I don't know why we rolled twice, brutalized my guard like it was paper mache. Like just, and Daniel's way bigger than, and just was like, I felt like a refrigerator was on my chest for 12 minutes. And I was like, well, this is what I got to do. So I never left. And my kids are 11 and 9, Bryce and Naya, and they train jiu-jitsu. They go twice a week because they do a bunch of other stuff. But I said, this is the one thing that's non-negotiable. You have to train jiu-jitsu. So like, and again, we don't go 5 days a week, 6 days a week. My goal isn't to make them world champions. My goal is to give them another tool in their toolbox. And we go to my buddy, our first black belt at my school, this guy Garrett Goldsberry. He has a school in North Jersey, mixed martial arts. I teach their class on Saturday, and I help him assist their class on Wednesday. So they come with me, and I get the chance. And like seeing your kids get tooled up into a pretzel is tough. Like me, I don't care, whatever. But like seeing your daughter like getting choked out, or your son having to fight through a real tough position, it's like I'm straight faced, but inside I'm like, damn, come on, man, you got it.
How have you dealt with some of these, like being the big guy on the mat things? Because I know I have some of that challenge
Yeah,
too sometimes. I'm not the biggest guy on the mat, but, as a bigger guy in an upper belt, that's a challenge at times.
yeah. Well, people feel that they can tee off, and I think that's the biggest problem, because if we reciprocated that, someone can get hurt,
Yeah.
right? Like if we reciprocated that, like we can like same thing when I was training for a kickboxing fight. Like I've never hit anybody full throttle, even in the body. Like I've cracked, but I've never hit anybody like as hard as I can, because all my guys are 185, like levers are lower, right? So when we're sparring, yeah, I'm gonna get that little pop pop, but we're playing again. To me, it's playful. We're playing. I don't and it's then you have guys that are like this big that are like throwing at you like you slapped their mom. And it's like, for me, I always give people a chill out moment, right? I always have it like in sparring, it's easy. You can body shot someone and let them know, like, bro, chill out. Like, I'm gonna throw something a little harder for you to feel, not to your head. I don't want to CTE you, but I'm gonna give you something to your body where it's gonna chill you out. And jiu-jitsu, same thing. If you're going nuts and I have to slow you down, when I do get on top, I'm not going for any submissions. I'm just gonna make your energy bar just go like this. It's time for me to make you feel like what death feels like, right? Without killing you. And it's like that smother tap and putting all your weight and pressure into a position. Like that's the way I chill people out. I was like, look, my man, I'm not gonna try to break your arm, but I'm gonna make life really tough, right? Because you have to learn. Because if you're doing that with me and I'm a big guy, what if we have one of our sisters that comes here, right? And you're trying to roll with her, you roll with everybody the same way. You're rolling with her like you're rolling with me. You're gonna hurt her, right? Or you're gonna hurt this, this white belt that just came to the class for like an introductory class, and now they think all jiu-jitsu guys are some, HGH, roided out animals, and it's like, so there's ways to just chill people out and slow people down. That's why I really like the gi too, is because like you can really slow people down with the gi. Like no gi, they're slippery or whatever. But like with the gi, like you can really get your get your mitts on them and be like, my man, we have to chill a little bit.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is you've got a pretty incredible story about a traumatizing injury and how that changed your life. But in a sport where we all sort of expect a little bit to get injured,
Yeah.
what do you usually tell people about dealing with injuries, knowing you come from that? And you can tell a little bit of that story because I think it's
Yeah.
useful for people to understand how different your life is as a result of it.
Yeah. I started playing basketball when I was 16, and I was god awful. I mean, I try to always preface that and tell people, like one of my really good friends, he has a blackmail tape of me playing basketball when I was like 17 years old that he threatens to release every couple of years. He hasn't yet, but I was just awful. But I want to start playing basketball. Back further, my father was a cop in Passaic, New Jersey, and he passed when I was 4. He passed from cancer when I was 4. And so when he passed away, my mom raised 5 of us by herself. And my brother Craig is on the spectrum. He's autistic. So my mom, all my like kind of grit and fight and next play mentality all comes from my mom. My mom is just someone that she's, again, if you throw a mountain in front of her, she's like, all right, it doesn't matter how long it takes me to get up here, I'm gonna get up there at some point. And so like I've had all these mountains in my life, growing up without a dad, not having any money, all these different things. But basketball is my biggest mountain because I just started playing. There's kids that have been playing since they were 3 years old, 4 years old. But I have my mom's work ethic. My mom worked 3 jobs and took care of 5 kids, right, for my whole entire life. We never had a month of where we didn't struggle, right? So it's growing up and seeing that, and seeing her mindset. I just developed this kind of like, all right, next play mindset. So once I started getting better at basketball, it took me 3 or 4 years, and I got a scholarship to play basketball. People couldn't believe that 4 years ago I was getting cut from the high school team, and now I'm getting a full ride, and now I'm getting a professional contract. And when I got a pro contract to play, I've only been playing basketball for 7 years. But I did this every single day for 6, 7 hours a day. Like every single day. There was no, I don't feel good or I'm tired or whatever. Everything poured into basketball because my mindset was, if I play professional basketball, my mom won't have to work anymore. I can help her with bills. And now I don't care about the money. I just want to sit at home and I just want to compete. So like that was my whole entire mindset. That was my whole entire drive to being a professional basketball player, was just take care of my mom and take care of, and play basketball. And so I was a week away from going to Portugal, Lisbon, Portugal, to play professionally, and I ruptured my Achilles tendon. And when that happened, you have this major injury, because back then an Achilles was a year injury, and with no guarantee you're coming back like you were. It's just a year injury for you to kind of be jumping and doing your thing. Now it's more like 6 months probably. And when I got injured, Eric, I thought that my world was pretty much over because I felt like a failure. I said, here I am telling my mom I'm going to buy her a house and, she'll never have to work anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And then I get injured and, I'm watching my mom, drive away to one of the 3 jobs I told her she'd never have to work again. And I tell people all the time, like, that was the hardest moment of my life. Like, up to that date, it was the hardest moment, just sitting in my room by myself. All my brothers and sisters were gone, and just thinking about the injury. And one of the things that took my mind off of it is I called one of my best friends up, my buddy Kevin, when it happened on Thursday. I got surgery on Thursday. That Friday, I called him up and said, hey, pick me up in the gym on Monday. We're going to the gym on Monday. And he sounded like I died, because anybody that was in my close circle knew how much work I put in. And he goes, what are we doing on Monday? I said, just take me to the gym. And for the next 6 months, I just shot from a chair. And it did nothing for my basketball game. It did everything for my sanity. It got me out of the house for an hour and a half and got me doing something that I love to do. And it just took my mind off it. And I tell people, when you go through any type of change, right? Any type of dramatic change, dramatic injury, there's this 5 stages they say you go through. You go denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, right? The 5 stages. Like, you find out you're terminally ill. You go through those 5 stages. I went through those 5 stages in about 48-hour period. And the reason you get through those stages is, at the end of that, the last one is acceptance. And just accepting that something has to be different. Like when you're on the mat, right? If you have a ankle injury, you have a knee injury, or your back is bothering you, whatever, if you don't accept that, you're going to get injured further, right? So you have to say, I'm accepting the fact that my back is screwed up. I don't have to tell everybody if I feel like it's not that bad, but I have to modify the way I train today so I can train today and train tomorrow, right? And then once I accept that, I can move through it. And that's my main thing. It's like, I accepted the fact that I got injured. I didn't yet accept the fact that maybe I wasn't created to just play basketball. That didn't happen until later on in life. But I accepted the fact that now, okay, I have an injury. This sucks. What are you going to do about it? Like, I always ask myself, like, okay, what are you going to do? Like, all right, cool. This sucks. Let's not forget about, like, you don't have to diminish the fact that you're going through stuff, but My next question is, what now? What are we going to do now? Because now that it's here, there's nothing we can do about the injury not happening because it's already happened. So are we going to PT? Are we rehabbing? Are we going to start reading more? Are we going to learn a different language? Like, what are you going to do? Start learning chess? Whatever you want to do, like, what are you doing to replace that time that you're going to have off the mats? And I have a buddy that he tore his pectoral muscle, but he's on the mats just watching. He's on the mats writing stuff down. And it's like, that's, I think, replacing whatever it is with something else and adding something to it. I think it makes it a little bit easier to do.
So you're like clearly a very positive person here.
Yeah.
And I guess that ties like pretty tightly into the motivational speaking. I mean, was that a thing that you had before you stepped onto the mat? Did the mat bring that out in you? Did the injury bring that out in you? Like, how did you get to that motivational speaking positivity mindset?
I've always been pretty positive. And I think the reason I've been pretty positive is because I'm the one in the family that makes my mom laugh. Like, that's my role. My role is the class clown, right? So I have, there's 5 of us and my mom. I have a bunch of half brothers too, but 5 of us live with my mom. My job was to make my mom laugh. So when my mom will come back from job 2 or whatever, and maybe the house isn't cleaned up the way it's supposed to be, or something happened, and I can tell that she's a little, something's bothering her a little bit, like, I would make her laugh. So, like, I've always been positive. I had no idea. I had a temper when I was really young because I had all this trauma and stuff from, like, so my dad passed. We never visited his gravesite. Like, from 4 years old to, like, in my early 30s, I went there by myself, right? So, like, my mom she said to me, if I looked backwards, you guys wouldn't have been able to move forward. So if I looked backwards at all, I wouldn't have been able to survive. So she's like, everything was forward. So that was her mindset thinking. So for me, I just remember my mom always telling us everything happens for a reason. So even when these bad things happen in my life, like growing up, I would just say to myself, the answer might not be here yet. Like, it might not be like, okay, well, it's the reason for this. Because my main thing was like, well, why did my dad die? Like, what's the reason for that? Like, why am I watching other kids play with their fathers and all this other stuff, and I don't have a father? That doesn't make sense to me. I didn't know that until my son was born. Then I realized the reasons. Like, now I pour everything into my kids. Like, I've always wanted to be a dad. So I've always been pretty positive. I think jiu-jitsu has made me calmer and it's made me more positive in a different way. And what I mean by that is, like, jiu-jitsu, like, whenever you talk to a Brazilian cat, right? He'll do a seminar at 1, he'll be there at 3:30, and he's like, hey, brother. Like, somehow no one's mad, right? Because it's like his energy is just so like, hey, brother, I came here to hear blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're just like, yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? Like, I guess the 2.5 hours that we waited, it's not a big deal, right? Like, you forget, like, no, we've been here for 2.5 hours. Like, when Henzo comes into a room, it doesn't matter what anybody's going through. Everybody's like, oh, hey, because Henzo's like, hey, hugging, high five. So I think jiu-jitsu really kind of chilled me out. I've never been like a high-strung person, but it helps me realize, like, okay, bro, is this really worth the argument, or is this really worth your time that you can't get back being mad over this situation? And when you do martial arts and you're at a good school and someone's looking at you in a menacing way, or right from like 5 blocks down the street, or like someone cuts you off, or someone gives you the finger or whatever, you could have your moment of like, fuck that guy, but like, you're not gonna get out the car and start throwing shit at the car, like, come on, man, like, come on. Like, it really just chills you out. Like, it's really not, it's not worth it. So I think jiu-jitsu kind of has enhanced my positivity, but I think it just made me a little calmer, where I'm not just like, bro, I'm good. Unless it's not a threat to my family, or a direct threat that's going to make me not be there for my family, man, I'm good, bro.
I feel like martial arts gives you people an understanding of violence in a way that the average person doesn't have, because you know what violence feels like to both enact and receive. And for me, that's one of the things that sort of calmed me down about martial arts as a child, is like, oh, this is what it feels like to punch or get punched. And it really, at least for me, reduced a lot of my anger.
Yeah. What was the first? How old were you when you first ventured into martial arts?
I was 6 or 7 years old. My parents
Wow.
stuck me in a Taekwondo school because I was acting out, which now as an adult I think they call ADHD. But
Yeah.
when I was young, they were just like, "Why is this kid not sitting down and paying attention?" And he's in sports, but it's not enough. Like let's throw him in martial arts. And so I started with Taekwondo and did the katas and the punching,
Yeah.
and you know,
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I did. I have a younger brother, but he never got into martial arts.
Never got into martial arts. So you're the only one, were you the only one in your family that did martial arts?
Yeah, nobody. My dad kind of did a little bit when he was in the military, and I did some combatives when I was in the military as well. But that was like that. Was not. It's martial arts techniques, but it's not the proper sort of martial arts mindset. You learn
Gotcha.
combatives in the military with the goal of defense
Killing.
or killing. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
the mindset's a little
A
bit different.
little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Yeah,
talk
we
about
never
the
had.
your positivity summit though. Like
Yeah.
you run an actual group activity about being positive. Um, and I want you to tell me a little bit about that and like how you got into that.
Well, first off, I'm putting this out in the cosmos because I want it to happen soon. We have to do one in Berlin. That's the first thing,
Okay.
right? Like, let's make it happen. Like, that's the first thing. Second, I was at an event. It's so crazy. My first book came out in 2013, The Power of Positivity, right? I was freaking so excited. And like my mom came to the book signing. It's like my son was just like 3 months old. Like it was my wife was like everybody, all my friends were there. Like your first book is like your first child. Everybody cares, right? The more books you have, the less people care. The less
I've only
people are like,
written
yeah, cool.
one. I'm not going to write
Yeah.
the second one, so I think I'm not going to experience this. I'm going to leave it as people
Just like
care.
experience the high from the
Yeah.
first one and just keep it there. And so um I was like I was just through the moon, and I started writing stuff like positive quotes. That's how it started. Started writing positive quotes online and all this stuff. And there was a lady that messaged me and asked me if I wanted to go to like a Tony Robbins event. And I'm like, I don't have $10,000 laying around. Like, me and my wife just had a kid. Like, unless I sell body parts, this is not gonna happen. Long story short, her and her husband paid for me to go to this Tony Robbins event. And I remember sitting there and thinking to myself, like, this event's cool. People like jumping up and down and doing all this stuff. And I was like, I want to do an event where it's not just me speaking and it looks different because you have to be at a certain tax bracket to go to one of Tony's events, right? I want to make something where it's like, under $100 where people can have access to all this information. Now, the ticket she bought me was $10,000, right? So it's like,
That's crazy.
it's crazy. And I'm like, there's 3,500 people in the main room. There's 1,500 people watching on a screen. And I was like, so, he's going to make a couple $1 million, but I'm like, 99.9% of the population can never come to this. So I started writing up at his seminar. I started writing up what I want the positivity something to look like. And I wanted people to come in and share their stories and interact. And the main thing was I wanted the audience to interact with one another. So there's like a lot of group stuff that happens, and like, so the guy I was telling you about, Gene Dunn, he's actually speaking for the first time at my Black Belt Mentor, speaking at the one we're doing in January. And
Nice.
so I've been able to bring all these like really cool speakers from all over the world to come in and share their stories. And like my goal was always to just show people we're the same. Like your adversity might look a little bit different than my adversity, but you're going through adversity. I don't have to know you to know that you've been through some stuff, right? You don't have to know me very well to know that I've been through stuff. And that commonality should be something that unites humans instead of divide humans. And when you turn your TV off and you stop being swayed by, the politics and religion and all these other things that like divide human beings, then you can sit and have conversation and realize like, oh my gosh, we have so many things in common. Like, why are we at each other's throats? This doesn't make any sense. So that's why I wanted to start the Positivity Summit, and I think we're on year 7 now. And it's been great, man. I love it, and we've been to England, we've been over, throughout the country here in the United States, but I want to start doing them in different countries again now that we're able to travel and all that stuff. And just kind of spread that word and let people know like, hey man, like let's connect and unite and not be apart from one another.
I mean, it sounds like you're really somebody who's trying to change the world, which I very much appreciate, especially because, we could use a little more love in the world. But
Yeah.
like what are you specifically passionate about trying to connect to people with people about?
Yeah. I think purpose, for the most part, is helping people understand is like your life is not linear. It's going to go all these different directions and all these different ways. But all of us are a cog in the wheel. None of us, not one person is going to change the world. Not one person can ruin it. We've had plenty of people that have tried to, right? And here we are. We're still here, right? So it's just purpose. Like there's a reason you exist. Without you being here, the world changes a little bit, right? Even if it's in your little ecosystem, that's going to change. So I want people to realize like there's a reason we're here. There's a reason you were created. Take pride in the fact that you were created out of the trillions of the odds, the insurmountable odds for you not to be here on Earth. Like take pride in that. And so I think purpose is one big thing, and the second thing is how long do you think you have on Earth? Right? Like we have such a short time here on this planet. Why would you waste it being negative or waste it being angry or waste it not loving yourself or loving other people? Because you don't get this life back. I don't know. Maybe you get reincarnated as a squirrel. I have no idea what happens after this. But you don't get the life that you have right now back. So why would you waste it, bringing negative energy or negative vibes to the earth? So those are
You're
my
listening
thoughts.
to this start to discover their purpose. Like what is the way that you sort of provide
Yeah.
for people?
Well, see, life is going to provide you with a ton of detours and obstacles that kind of, like for me, like I didn't, you came to me 12, 13 years ago and said you'd be speaking all over the world about positivity. Like, no, no, you're crazy. No, I wouldn't be. Right. But so some of the challenges and the traumas that you've been through. But I always tell people, write down what you want. What do you want? Like people don't sit and think about it because they're so busy in the rat race. Whereas like I gotta work to pay bills and this and this and this and this, and then they go home and then it's like you're on repeat mode. So every day is the same, and then next thing you know you're 85, right? Like take time out and really sit and think to yourself like, what is it I want? Like what do I want to do while I'm here? I always look at it like it's like you're at an amusement park. Like you have this agenda. Like, what do I want to do? I want to hit the bumper cars. I want to hit this roller coaster. I want like while I'm here on Earth, I'm like, well, what is it? Like me and my family went to Niagara Falls for one day. We went to Niagara Falls yesterday, right? It's a 6 hour drive, not that crazy. I've never been there before in my life. My wife has always talked about it. I said, guys, early Sunday morning, we're gonna get up and go to Niagara Falls. I already booked the hotel, everything. They're like, what? I'm like, yep, we're gone. Took them, took them out of school today. Like they went back to school today. Took them out of school Monday. We went up to Niagara Falls, got all the mist and saw the falls, went over here, and then came back the next day. And I'm like, this is stuff that we did not have the means to when I was with my mom. She never had the means to take us to these places. So one of my things I really want to do while I'm on this earth is experience more of it. I want to meet people like Eric all over the world and share stories and hang out and talk to people and break bread. Like that's what I want to do because I feel like a part of my mission here is to be a connector. And when I have people that I know, like I have a friend in Berlin, right? So like when I have people that are like, oh man, I'm gonna go to Berlin. Oh man, you gotta go to see my buddy Eric. Eric's awesome. And then it's like I love seeing really cool people connect with one another, And like that was probably my favorite part about my wedding is our wedding is like seeing all these people in different parts of your life in the same room, and you're always thinking like, what's it gonna be like? Well, like Mike hangs out with D, and like Byron hangs out with this one. It's like I'm seeing them interact, and I'm just like, I just remember sitting there, and I was like, this is just so crazy. Like I'm still like that now, where I'm like, I just want to bring everybody together in my life of these different realms and have them all connect and interact with each other.
I think that's a very specific skill. Like some people are just networkers. They're like born
Yeah,
networkers. And it's almost like they're better at connecting other people than they are at connecting themselves. In the sense
mm-hmm.
that's like I know that like if Mike talks to Brian, they're gonna go on about this. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
people aren't even as good at getting themselves out there, but they can connect these two people and they'll end up having some, business, professional, romantic, whatever it is, relationship.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true because it's like a lot of it's, when I have conversations, they're never transactional. Like none of my conversations are ever transactional. It's always just like, hey man, what's up? Who are you? That's what I mean. I don't care what you do. What you do is fine. We'll find out later. But like, who are you? Because the who are you to me is the most important part. right? If I'm like, who are you? Oh, I'm a serial killer. Okay, great. Well, this conversation's over. I'm gonna move on to the next one, right? Like, so my main thing is like, who are you? And we were just talking about this the other day. I meet people like at the airport, or like picking up a rent a car, or picking like we rented a car to go to Niagara Falls, and this kid Karen is telling me, him and his wife just got their first house, and he's like, yeah, after this I have to go and I gotta unbox everything and paint the thing and blah 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 blah. And me and him were talking for like half hour. My wife's like, what took you so long? I'm like, Karen is awesome. They just got his house in Rockaway and blah blah. She's like, you do this everywhere we go. I was like, but I'm curious about people. Like, I'm so curious about other human beings. It's like, I love that part, and that's never gonna change for me. I'm always gonna be. I'll be the old guy. When kids are like, oh man, here this guy's, telling us about his life story and asking us about what we're doing and blah blah blah.
But that's actually why I enjoy kind of having these conversations, because I also similarly enjoying talking to people, not only to find out about who they are and what their life's about, but what they're passionate about. And
Yeah.
it's super fulfilling for me to do that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good point. You said earlier that purpose is a really helpful thing. Do you feel like people can be fulfilled without purpose?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me because it's hard for me to get into the mind of someone that doesn't have it, because I feel that I do. Like, I feel like my dad passed when he was 41. And in that short time, like 13, 14 years ago, they named a street after him in Passaic, because of the amount of work he did in the community for kids, all the bad kids that nobody wanted to work with. He made them junior police officers and clean up the city and all these things. And I'm thinking to myself, like, my dad was only a cop for like 15 years, and they named the street after him. It was like, what kind of work did this do? Like, he knew that, like, it's almost like he worked like he didn't have time, right? Like, it's like you hear that, like, about Bruce Lee, and like, it's like, man, they put in so much work. It's almost like they knew they weren't here long. So it's like they were working every single day, like, I got to get all this stuff in. And so when I talk to people like that don't have dreams, right, or don't have purpose, it's hard for me to relate. I don't judge them, but it's hard for me to relate, because I have had a big dream now for a very long time, which is to go out and help people, etc. So I think that not having dreams more than purpose, but not having something that you dream about doing or achieving or being, then it's like, well, what are you on earth doing? Are you just working? Are you just like...
I mean, I partially asked the question because I actually don't really have crazy dreams or anything. I actually lead a very fulfilled life. And it's most of the time I enjoy helping other people, whether that's helping them get better at jujitsu, or like the executive coaching that I do, or I enjoy this conversation, or I enjoy spending time with my friends. And none of that classes to me as purpose. So I was, sort of curious, as somebody who preaches purpose, like, does that fulfillment negate purpose, or is fulfillment an acceptable replacement?
See, but I look at that different. I look at that you're 100% doing your purpose. You're helping people every single day. That's a purposeful life, because for me, purpose is something that is beyond you. When you are no longer here, the school that you're at and the people that you've impacted are still going to be affected by you. That to me is purpose. That's leaving a legacy behind. That's purpose. When I look at it, is like, what am I leaving behind for people, right? Like, I'm leaving behind, maybe a quote, or I'm leaving behind a book, or I'm leaving behind the way I made someone feel. You do that on a daily basis. So for me, fulfillment doesn't negate purpose. You can be fulfilled, and sometimes you don't even know you're in your purpose. This is seamless to you. This is something you do every single day. You have conversations every single day. You help people every day. But Eric, that is not normal for regular people. Not everybody helps people every single day. There's plenty of people, billions, that don't help anyone at all.
That's fair. I do it because I love to do it. I'm not doing it. I guess my point was more that I don't look at this as a purpose. I look at this as, I'm doing this in a somewhat selfish way. I'm teaching jujitsu because I love to teach jujitsu, and I love to interact with people. I'm having these conversations because I love to interact with people. It's not purpose, but I understand the distinction you're making. That's interesting.
Yeah, I define, again, might define one thing completely different. I define it, for me, I define it as, bro, you are 100% living your purpose, because you're doing what you love every day and helping people and impacting people. Purpose for me is a big part of it is the impact. I don't have to go into your school to know the amount of people that you impacted, right? Just our conversations. I know for a fact you walk into that school, people are like, oh, God, Eric's here, right? Like they can't wait to learn, right? So I look at it as like and that's the thing. It's hard sometimes because when you're doing something that you love and that you would do every single day for free if you could, if there's no such thing as bills, right? You forget like, oh, wait a second, I am also helping other people. When I go speak, I'm like, I almost feel like I'm stealing because I get more out of it than the people that I'm driving home like, yo, that was so much fun, blah 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 blah. I'm like, I'm getting a check to do that.
I can't believe people pay me to do this. Yeah, I know that feeling.
I'm getting a check to share my story and hang out and laugh and like engage with people. I was like, this is crazy to me.
Is there something specific about mentoring that you really love? Is it like the helping people? Is it children that you specifically, because I know you do some youth mentoring as well. Is there something like very specific that you enjoy, or is it more just generally like, hey, this is the group that I can make an impact on?
Yeah, I think it's two different energies. So like if I go to high schools and schools, the energy for me is it's so much higher from them because they're seeing someone that is really speaking to them and not at them. I'm not talking to them from like a mountain, like, hey, dumb kids, like, you're not saying all teachers do that, but like, hey, kids, like, listen to me. I'm more saying, like, look at all the stuff that I've been through. Look at all the mistakes that I've made. I'm trying to give you kind of a little bit of a blueprint so you don't make those same mistakes. When I go into companies and I have conversations or I talk about team and culture, right, I just love seeing the light bulb. That's my favorite part of all of it is like seeing the light bulb and people seeing like, oh, wait a second. I have way more than I think that I have, or there's more in the tank, or I'm not done yet, or I'm not. So those light bulb moments for me is gratifying for when I go into schools or I go into companies. But the energy is different. Like adults are taught to kind of listen. Kids, if you don't come and bring it, like I get ready for speaking at schools, like that's like you're getting ready for a fight. Like I'm pacing in the hallway because I know I have to like the first 3 minutes. I gotta come at them like let's get it right, and so I can get them to like really lock in. But I just love seeing the light bulb. I love getting messages from kids that are like, I'll get messages like, hey, I'm 15, my dad's an alcoholic, my mom's dead, I'm taking care of my two sisters. Thank you for coming to speak today. It really gives me hope. It's like I drive home teary eyed most of the time, and it's like tears of joy, but I'm also like these kids are going through so much stuff with social media and all this other nonsense, and it's like, man, just to fight through it, like it's tough. So if I can give them an hour and a half, 2 hours of some inspiration and some hope, then mission accomplished.
Did you sort of intentionally, I know you said you didn't exactly intentionally get into this motivational speaking, but I mean, it sounds like you're following a accidentally quite similar path to your dad, helping people, helping the troubled kids. Like, was there any intentionality to that or just so happened?
None at all. It's so funny, Eric. I look back at it, it's like my dad was here. Like this is his goal was single minded, right? Cop, help the community. I was all over the place with basketball and all this other place. And then we just met up. And the funny thing is, every other path that I went had to do with helping and impacting others, but it just looked different. Like when you're coaching basketball, you're helping people every single day, but you have an ROI sometimes of wins and losses, and that kind of clouds what the actual work that you're doing. I open up a company training kids. I've had kids come to me and their parents say, I don't care what kind of basketball player they're gonna be, but you're putting confidence into them. Like you're making them feel good about themselves. And I'm just sitting there like, okay. So it's like everything has got me ready for this. Like when you're a coach, you're speaking to kids and trying to inspire kids every day to practice, to go to class, to be good teammates, to not be dicks, right? Like, every single day you're inspired, like to not follow the crowd, etc. And so when I get in front of people, it's familiar. When I was younger, my mom was really religious, and the church you would go to, when you're 8, 9 years old, they put you in front of 100 adults to read like Bible scriptures. So I was doing that shit at 8, like trying to read like words like Deuteronomy as an 8-year old, like, reading it in trying not to mess up, and it's like, so I think my life has always kind of been preparing me. All these chapters have been preparing me for right now. And it's just amazing. Like whenever someone asks, like, if you could sit down with, three people living or dead, who I said just one, my father. I would love to hear, you know, what motivated him or inspired him to take the path of helping. He was one of 21 kids, my dad. And
21
he was the
kids?
oldest. And he was the oldest. And and there was times where, they lived in Georgia. There was times that he'd have to sleep outside, right? Because they didn't have any room. So it's like, and when he moved to New Jersey, to Passaic, New Jersey, he moved because his biological mom moved to Passaic, New Jersey, but she didn't want anything to do with him. So he moved in with a Spanish family that knew English but only speak Spanish to him because they thought that would give him a kind of a one up in terms of being a police officer because the city was mainly black and Spanish. So if he wanted to eat anything, he'd have to say it in Spanish. So he was fluent in Spanish in the 60s, and it's like that gave him an edge up on all these other officers. He's one of the first black police officers in the city of Passaic, New Jersey, and on top of the fact he was fluent in Spanish. So he's beloved by everybody in Passaic to this day. Like when I go down, they do his every summer. They do his street ceremony, and there's guys that are in their 60s. They're like, "Man, your dad saved my life," and it's like, and I'm just like blown away that I'm always saying, like, if one person talks about me like these people talk about my dad, I've done the right thing.
Do you feel any particular way about being like a black man in America whose father was a cop, knowing how many black people feel about cops? Is that like a particular thing for you?
It's only when the media gets a hold of a story, right? Like when it's the George Floyd thing, they want to spin it because everything here is political. So they want to spin it so it's a political thing. Like, there's no black cops or brown cops anywhere. You go into New York City, like most of the cops that you see are black and brown. Like my dad was a cop in the 60s where, there's some place where we couldn't even drink from the same water fountain, but here he is as a police officer, right? Not just policing black folks, but policing everybody. So I'm always, one thing about, my mom has always raised us on is, don't follow and think for yourself. And so I always tell people is like, I don't follow, like I haven't watched the news in over a decade, right? Like I don't follow, the media rhetoric or if society is saying, because there's pressures from your race, there's pressure from your religion, there's pressure from your gender, there's pressure from everything. Like, oh, well, cops are this, cops are like, my dad was a cop. My oldest brother was a cop in New York. It's like some of my best friends I trained jiu-jitsu with are police officers. Not a racist bone in their body. My kids call them their uncle or their aunt, right? So it's like I always say, you don't judge a carton by an egg, right? Ever. I never judge a carton by the egg. I deal with assholes I've seen every form of asshole, right? Like there's from every race, every religion, every profession, right? There's assholes everywhere. And I don't judge the next person because of that person. If I met you and me and you got into an argument, I'm not like, well, everybody from Berlin, Germany is blah, blah, right? Just like you're not going to be like, everybody from New Jersey. No, right? So I
Well,
think
I'm
it's
from New
silly.
Jersey. I grew up in New
Yeah.
Jersey. I grew up
Okay,
in
my
Bergen
fault.
County.
Let's go. Let's go.
I was born in New York City. I grew up in Bergen County,
Oh, I love, what town did you live in?
Franklin Lakes.
Franklin Lakes. Let's go. I knew I liked you right away.
Yeah, we're very local in that sense. Like I'm surprised
Yeah.
that having done martial arts most of my life that we never crossed paths. I know age wise we're a little bit different, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm surprised we
Yeah.
never
But
crossed paths.
it's crazy, but it's funny, E, like you always, so my buddy went to Israel, and there's a jiu-jitsu school there that has Palestinians and Jews, right? And they train together. And he trained at the gym. And when they train together, there was no problems when they train together. But when they get out that school, one has to go this way, one has to go the other way. They can't talk in public. And you hear
Yeah.
people say all the time, if the world was like the jiu-jitsu mats, there would be no world wars, there would be no famine, there'd be no nothing. Because we don't care who you are. The main question we ask, are you a good person? Right? If you're a good person, I don't care who you pray to. I don't care what you look like. You're a good person. We can train, brother. Like it's all good. And I'm telling you, if people took jiu-jitsu in the macro and like just said, okay, let's model the world after jiu-jitsu, we would be good to go. So if the right school, we would be good to go. So man, it's funny. I've only met I don't think I've in one hand I can't tell you 5 people I met in jiu-jitsu that weren't good people. I've met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people.
You've throughout the course of this conversation, you've given like quite a few, I think, very good quotes, and I think that probably comes from a lot of the positivity stuff. Is there any piece of advice that you just kind of wish everyone knew or everyone could take away?
I think one of my favorite quotes is I think his name is Horace Mann. He said, "I once had the blues because I had no shoes until upon the street I met a man who had no feet." And that always stayed with me because just had this conversation with my kids yesterday. Gratitude, 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 gratitude. That has always stayed with me. Like, be grateful for everything, everything. When I wake up, the first thing I'm grateful for is that my eyes are open. First thing, 4:20. I wake up 4:20 every morning. First thing I say to myself is thank you. I'm grateful for the day. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in this day. I have no idea what life has ready for me, but I am grateful for the fact that I have the opportunity to change whatever happened, transpired yesterday, and whatever's coming my way. I have an opportunity to do that because I know there's tens of thousands of people that did not have that opportunity all around me. People didn't make it, right? So I always just say, if you live your life with just gratitude and being grateful, man, like it. If you go different places and you see how people really live, if you go to places where hot water is a luxury, roof over your head is a luxury, when you go to those places, you will be grateful. If you're only in your bubble and you have your iPhone and your iPad and your i blah blah blah, and like someone gets your Starbucks coffee order wrong, you'll be pissed at everything, right? So I just start my day all the time with gratitude, like meeting you and just having these conversations. For me, like this is what my day was. I woke up, had some conversations, answered some emails, and I get a chance to talk to my brother that's in Berlin, my Jersey brother in Berlin, for a while. Like this is how can I not be grateful for the day? So I'd say live your life in gratitude.
That's great. I gotta say, I struggled with that for a long time. And I think I definitely struggled with it when I was more depressed than anything else. But when I sort of got out of the depression, which admittedly took years, I really started trying to be a little bit more grateful. And I think that's an incredibly hard thing to do for most people. I know it was hard for me, but it's like one of those things I try to chip away at like a little bit every day and just say like, okay, I'm really grateful for, this or that, or the life I get to live, or anything like that.
Was it a moment that kind of pulled you out, or was it just constant work on kind of getting you out of that like dark place that kind of got you past it?
It was a lot of chipping away at it. It was not, there was no like moment. I think a lot of it also had to do with the pandemic and being isolated. And
Mm-hmm.
it was very hard for me to be social in a place where I didn't speak the language very well. And I didn't have a community yet. And we couldn't really, there wasn't jujitsu training, and I didn't have the gym yet because I just moved. And so there was just such a lack of social interaction that, combining that with the isolation and frankly just chemical issues in my brain that forced depression. It was just a lot of like my wife kind of kicking my butt every day and being like, hey, you're actually really lucky in it. And once I got to that point, and then it was started being self-reinforcing. But that was not like a flip the switch kind of moment for me,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. It's crazy how it's so different for when you hear stories like that, man. It's different for everybody. I always tell people it's like you never judge stuff that people are going through because there's people that are afraid of paper. There's a phobia of paper. There's a phobia of butterfly. There's phobia like so. I never make fun of anyone's boogeyman because everybody has a boogeyman. It just looks different. So getting through it, man, what a great testimony that you can share with other people and people that are going through it. Not just at your school, but outside of your school. When people are going through hard things, like, hey, man, I've been there.
I feel very lucky that I have not only like the platform to kind of do that, but one of the things I do professionally is I'm a CTO of a company, and so I have a few hundred people that work for me.
Wow.
And one of the things that I do is every couple of weeks I do a people manager training. And
Hmm.
because I get to have this kind of, just like before, I get to have this influence over people who are learning. I I try to impart things that I think are very important. And one of those things is, hey, here's how you recognize the difference between motivation as a problem or actual depression. And, not that I'm telling the average people manager in an IT company to learn how to diagnose depression and
Yeah.
deal with it, but it's like, hey, we need to recognize this as a possibility. And the more people that understand that mental health can be a challenge for the average person, the more compassionate and empathetic we can be as humans, and the more supportive that we can be. And I feel very grateful, back to that gratitude thing, that I have the opportunity to share that with people and hopefully help a few people along the way.
Yeah. There's this whole big kick that was driving me nuts where people are like, "Oh, get over it. You'll be fine." But like it's like, bro, you don't know what these people have been through. You have no idea what their challenges are. You don't It's not like one size fit all. This is how you get better. I'm going to sell you this program that makes you happy. It's just such bullshit. And I'm like, you can't like you're selling people snake oil, like the snake oil salesman, right? Like you're selling them bullshit. It's like then they do it, and then they're like, well, I guess it doesn't work for me. I guess I'm like hopeless because I tried this $15,000 program and I'm still depressed. Not only am I depressed now I can't even pay rent, right? So it's just like, dude, man, you have to kind of just find your way and find your path. And luckily, you had your wife, and you know, hopefully, I always tell people it's like you have no one to talk to, then hit me up. I talk like hit me up. Like if you feel like it's that dark and there's just bro, if you have my phone number, hit me up, message me, and then sometimes I'll get that call, where I'll get that text message like, hey, see, I'm going through it. One guy, good friend of mine, was like, hey, do you want to go skating? And it's like he knew I could stand on a skateboard because I got a skateboard because I wanted to roll around with my son. He had a scooter at the time, and I go, yeah, screw it. And we went skating. We used to skate. We went skating. And I'm like, my wife said, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to go skateboarding. She's like, you're going to go what? I was like, yeah, I'm going to go skateboarding. And we went skateboarding. And it's like, he was like, yeah, man, I was really going through some stuff. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, man, this was fun. It was like, tell me next time you want to come. Right? So it's like, I feel that like God or whoever you believe in gives people bigger shoulders, some people bigger shoulders, because this is part of the work. That's part of your work or your assignment for you to be here is like, to help other people and take on some of their problems.
I mean, I don't know that I share the same belief, but I absolutely accept the responsibility. Is there anything that you're excited for in the future?
Yeah, tons of stuff, tons of stuff. But January we have another positivity summit, January 10th, and just speaking. I'm speaking at a army base. I'm speaking at West Point this Saturday, which I'm excited about, to their swim team, and that should be fun. And then I'm speaking at another army base in the beginning of November and a couple schools. So I'm always excited when I go speak. Just some my kids now, my kids that I coach for basketball, that are seniors in high school. They're getting ready to sign at the schools they're going to go to. So just seeing their dreams come true and fulfill their dreams is always fires me up. So just kind of everything. Every day looks different. So I'm excited to see what the next day is going to bring.
Cool. Is there anything that you want to promote? I mean, you just talked about some of the talks you're doing, the Positivity Summit, and we'll put some of those in the show notes. But anything specifically you want to get out to the world?
Just I speak all over. If anybody wants me to, there's no place that I won't. Like I said, I've been to Middle East and Africa and all over Europe. Doesn't matter if you want me to come down and speak or speak at your company or speak at your school or university, then CornellThomas.com. I love to come and speak. I love meeting new people. And I think there was one week where I went to Africa, Dubai, and Saudi in 8 days, and then came back. It was like 48 hours in the air to be there for about three 3 days.
That's intense.
That was intense, but I had such a fun time. I have all the energy in the world until I go to the hotel.
I
So
mean,
as I
that's a
get to the
good place to
hotel,
give it up. Like
yeah, I'm out.
that's where your face hits the bed.
I'm out. It's like I'll be talking to my wife and kids. We'll be doing FaceTime, and they just hang up because I'm like, yeah, guys, it was great. And it's like, I wake up the next day.
But that's the way to do it. Better
That's the way
there
to do it.
than out in the out.
Yeah.
Cornell, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate your energy, and I really enjoyed this
Thanks for having me,
conversation.
brother. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you want to bring Cornell in to speak, or if you have any questions about life, motivation, or finding your purpose, reach out to him directly. You can find links to his books and to the Positivity Summit in the show notes. If you find yourself near Denville, New Jersey, reach out to Cornell or anyone at Henzo Gracie Denville for a welcoming place to train. You can find their contact information in the show notes as well. We discussed mental health and depression a few times throughout the course of the conversation. If you're struggling, please do your best to reach out for help. I know it's not easy, and there are more willing to support you than you know. I hope you enjoyed our conversation on BJJ, life, and purpose as much as I enjoyed having it. And as always, thank you for your time and attention.